Hi, I'm LadyJenevia. Today's video is a review of The Menu. This movie comes out this weekend, but I managed to catch a screening of it a few days early, and I enjoyed it so much that I decided I would talk about it here on my channel because more people should see it. Let's try to have some theatrical successes outside of the confines of giant IPs. This video will be timestamped for the first section of non-spoilers and the later section, which will include some spoilers, since I would imagine there will be some people who don't find or don't watch this review until after they've already seen the film. I would heavily advise all of you to watch the film first without having it spoiled in advance. It's really fun to see certain mysteries unfold and the various layers peeled back as the story progresses and escalates before a very satisfying conclusion. The first point I want to talk about: it's imperative to understand how I enjoyed the film and what I hope will be something that others in the industry can learn from. The trailer for The Menu was very good. It offered enough of a tease to give a vague impression of the film's premise and vibe, but it did not overshare the most interesting or exciting details of the film's mystery or many of its other wonderful attributes. You can see that a group of people are going to have an expensive, high-end meal by a professional chef and his large kitchen staff, but somewhere along the way, things are going to escalate in a way that they did not anticipate. There will be a yet-to-be-determined amount of violence. For what reason? We don't know. Naturally, the film benefits from having big names in the cast. That can do a bit of heavy lifting in regards to marketing and enticing an audience to show up, but there are plenty of films that can and have underperformed in recent years, even if they have big-name actors in the main cast. So clearly, a quality trailer does in fact make a difference. If drama, intrigue, and mystery are significant ingredients of your story, I do not want you to reveal everything in a trailer. One of the most refreshing surprises about actually going and seeing The Menu, after having had this trailer play in front of numerous other cinematic releases for months, is that it was shockingly funny. I had zero idea from watching the film's trailer that The Menu was going to have a wickedly dark sense of humor in the best way possible. In order to effectively explain what's so great about the film's humor, though, I have to first present the premise. Meet Tyler and Margot, respectively portrayed by Nicholas Hoult and Anya Taylor-Joy. They are a young couple who are part of a group of guests who are traveling to eat at an exclusive, extremely expensive restaurant called Hawthorne, which is located on a remote island. This restaurant is run by a famous chef named Julian, who is portrayed by Ralph Fiennes. The menu is lavish and decadent, with each course being first introduced by Julian with some sort of elaborate concept. Chef Julian is very heavy on the notion of his food being art. But like I already said, the trailer hints at the fact that something is going to go awry for this group of guests. The general impression I got was that the film was going to be some sort of merging of drama, horror, perhaps a bit of a thriller as well. And for the most part, I think all of those things that I hypothesized ended up being true. What I didn't expect, though, was that the film is a very funny, satirical examination of class inequality. With this restaurant, the food, and the clientele being as bougie as they are, there is, like I said, a great deal of decadence. You have these really creative dishes, the presentation of them is very artistic, the cinematography, the scoring, everything appears to be immaculate. Having said all of that, though, the idea of paying obscene amounts of money so you can have these tiny, pretentious dishes, it's absurd in the grand scheme of things. America in particular has so many homeless people, but there is also loads of poverty and famine in countries all over the world. But you want to pay, what, over $1,000 per person for one multi-course meal?
Death to all of them.
Now, as an audience member, you might be perfectly fine watching these rich people eating expensive food at first, because it's a movie, it's fictional. You're going into the cinema to watch a story that you are hoping and presuming will entertain you. But what you don't realize until you start watching is that the film is extremely self-aware of how ridiculous it is for these rich people to be doing what they're doing. The story, the characters, the dialogue, it leans into these people being pretentious and ridiculous, and it mocks these rich people to an increasing degree agree the further we get along in the runtime. With a cast as star-studded as this, it should surprise absolutely no one that we get excellent performances across the board. Nicholas Hoult was absolutely deranged in this, and I mean that as a compliment, but I'm not going to elaborate on the details because we're in a spoiler-free section, and it's better to experience what he does when you watch it for the first time. Ralph Fiennes, well, no one is surprised that he can command everyone's attention and be very unsettling while doing so. We all saw Red Dragon, didn't we? In the menu, he is eerie, domineering, but also refined. And then there's Anya Taylor-Joy. See, her performance is a tricky one because at first you think that she's just this cool, aloof girl, but just as the layers of the story and circumstances are peeled back over the runtime, so too are the layers of her character. As you start to learn more about who she really is, Anya gets to play a lot more range than the trailer would have led you to believe. Additionally, Chau was tremendously fun to watch. She had some very memorable instances of putting these wealthy people in their place, and that was everything. In those moments, it feels like she's serving revenge for every service worker, especially everyone who has ever worked in a restaurant and had to deal with nightmare customers. Hong's character, Elsa, she was doing what so many restaurant workers would love to be able to do. But of course, part of why she is able to get away with doing what she does is because this restaurant is in an extremely elite position of privilege. Also, they are on a remote island, so if any of you customers don't like the food or the service, where exactly are you going to run off to? Outside? You can go ahead and do that, but it's getting quite late, and the boat that dropped everyone off is no longer present and accounted for. So good luck with that. Without getting into the specifics, a large reason of why I ended up enjoying the menu as much as I did is because of the commentary on class inequality. Of course, the satirical sense of humor, strong performances, and technical excellence across the board were all reasons for me to rate the film favorably. But if you are not new to my channel, you already know that anytime a film begins to veer into territories like anti-capitalism or any type of eat the rich sentiments, the likelihood of me increasing my rating goes up. I highly recommend the film to anyone and everyone that is old enough to see it. It's visually very pretty to look at. It's got comedy, drama, thrills, and chills, and will hopefully remind you to rise up against the obscenely rich, because those people are not good people, and they don't deserve to live in extreme luxury while so many people are suffering. Now that we've made it through the spoiler-free section, I do want to talk about some spoilers because I want to revel in the details of what it is that we find out, the way that the story ends, all of that jazz. Not to mention, I don't know anyone in my personal life who has seen this yet, and I don't know if any of them are planning to see it. So if you've already seen the menu, then we should all celebrate its merits together. One of the many things I love is the way this film introduces the ensemble of characters that make up the clientele of this restaurant. At first, you can tell that they're wealthy. They would never have the access to this restaurant if they weren't. But they also carry themselves in ways that indicate that they're used to getting their way. They feel entitled to that behavior because of their wealth. And in general, they don't come across as particularly likable people. But I, as a viewer, don't necessarily object to their behavior when it's first starting out because these characters make sense for the setting that we are being shown. However, then we see the layers peeled back of all of these characters at this restaurant. You learn more of the details. This older businessman sexually harassed one of his former employees. These young, obnoxious businessmen are committing fraud. This restaurant critic is absolutely remorseless about how some of her scathing reviews can and have caused restaurants to go out of business, which in turn ruins the financial livelihood of numerous everyday workers. The list goes on and on. I'm not going to lie, though. The revelation that was specifically about John Leguizamo's assistant, that got a massive laugh in my screening. It wasn't just me laughing, more or less everyone in the audience started laughing very loudly, and I do not make that point lightly, considering how there was a lot of laughter all throughout the movie, but that one line in particular about why she was being doomed to die with the rest of the elites stuck out quite a bit for the reaction it provoked in the audience. And it's even funnier when put into the larger context of how much we were already laughing when Ralph Fiennes explained why John Leguizamo had been doomed to die. Now, hopefully, if you're still watching by this point, you are someone who has seen the film, but in case you disregarded my disclaimer to watch the film first before diving into spoilers, for the sake of clarity, I will explain that Ralph Fiennes, Chef Julian, he has gathered the specific group of people in attendance with the understanding that they are all going to die by the end of the night or by the end of the meal. Chef Julian has become increasingly disillusioned by his life, his success, and even his art. There are some interesting ideas that the menu explores through his character about the nature of being a professional artist in a capitalist society and the trajectory you typically follow to achieve success. You start off with your passion for something. In his case, it's food. You eventually reach that point of seeing him in his earliest stage of that untarnished passion for food, which was when he was just making regular food for regular customers. But then you go through the training, the grind of elevating your success and status within that field. And for him, as a professional chef, this means that you have to charge more money for access to his art. This in turn narrows the access to his art to only those who can afford it. And the most wealthy people in a capitalist society are going to be ethically dubious, morally repugnant individuals. And really, the entire concept of having this expensive artistic meal that is only accessible to the wealthy elite, it exists in direct opposition to the pure exchange of the creation and enjoyment of art. The menu shows that one of the pairs of customers in this group has been to this restaurant multiple times, and yet they are unable to name any of the food they have been served, even though Ralph Fiennes, Chef Julian, he goes through this grandiose presentation and explanation of each course of every meal that is served. There might be some foodies out there in this world of the menu who do not have the financial means to access this restaurant, but if they were able to access it, maybe they would be able to appreciate the artistry of Chef Julian's meals in a way that none of the people in that room can. This is sort of how I feel about my increasing disillusionment for things like conventions and other fan spaces for entertainment media. Typically, you have to have and spend the most money to get the most out of those expensive events. A convention, a concert, a person having less money or not wanting to spend as much money does not negate their passion for whatever that particular art form is. There are conventions out here asking fans to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars for VIP access to celebrity meet and greets, to be able to jump the queue for photo ops. And you can spend your money how you choose, regardless of what I say. But my personal opinion is that all of that is a scam. So with a film like The Menu, it is surprisingly thorough in its takedown of the elite. Having more money does not make you a better or more intrinsically valuable person. You were probably terrible in how you went about obtaining that much money, and now you're going to have your dirty laundry exposed to the audience on an overpriced tortilla. But of course, I wouldn't be able to leave this video without expressing praise for the film's ending. For as much fun as the escalating drama and mayhem was, and all the comedic satire I have repeatedly emphasized, I really enjoyed the way everything built up to the final showdown between Anya Taylor-Joy, Margot, and Ralph Fiennes, Chef Julian. Their conversations at first glance seem like a way for Chef Julian to probe into Margot's past so he can learn her secrets, but once the film finishes, you realize that those conversations went both ways. She learned who he was, how he feels, this disillusionment he has for his art only being accessible to the wealthy, and it is only because she is not a member of the elite and instead a regular everyday worker that she has the street smarts and survival instincts to beat him at his own game. She broke into his house. She broke the rules that were set by this elite system. That was what granted her access to who he is, where he came from, and that he started off as just a humble cook making burgers on a hot grill. Breaking the rules of oppressive systems, always heroic. Whistleblowers are some of the most heroic people we have today, and as a result, they are violently targeted by the people they expose, such as the architects of war at the highest tiers of the military-industrial complex, the NSA, all of that. So Margot sees a photo of Chef Julian smiling, which, if you're overly literal in your processing of information, just means that he's smiling because it's quite common for people to smile when being photographed. But if you are looking through a lens of media literacy, you will understand that this is being shown to indicate that this was a time in his life when he was actually happy. It might not be particularly glamorous. He presumably was not rich or famous as a chef at that point in his life, but he could have an honest connection to food, to people, and he was able to just live life with meaningful relationships and happiness. Therefore, when Margot ends up back in that room, trapped and doomed to die with everyone else, she takes back her power. She uses his exact tactics, the clap. She rejects his art for being too esoteric and asks him to fulfill his purpose, which is to feed the customer food that they will enjoy. Another key difference in this exchange compared to the rest of how we've seen the food being prepared is that in that instance, Chef Julian was the one preparing the food himself. All these other times we've seen the courses being prepared for the elite clientele, his staff is the one doing the labor. By gaining an increasing amount of success, money, and status in his field, he had grown more and more distant from the very thing he had been passionate about in the first place: food. Margot was the one who served him a reality check and brought him back down to the very foundation of being a chef. And also, her wiping her mouth with the menu was a nice touch. I've already seen some posts comparing the menu to Midsommar, and I don't particularly agree with them. Midsommar is not a multi-genre film. It is straight up horror, and the film ends horrifically with an emotionally vulnerable woman joining a fascist cult. The menu is an indictment of ultra-wealthy elites. The menu is getting added to the Revolution playlist I have on Letterboxd. Midsommar is not. There was a line that really stood out to me where Chef Julian was pointing out that the customers, they didn't really fight back as hard as they could have. He outright says that they either could have or probably could have overpowered their captors, but they just didn't. They went along with it. See that right there? That is revolutionary rhetoric. That is a very unsubtle call to action to the audience. It's telling the people in the audience that they have the power within themselves to overthrow the violent captors holding them hostage. So it was no surprise that I had as much fun as I did with the viewing experience. I will probably try to see this one again if I can, though admittedly, next week I'm going to be caught up in watching the Knives Out sequel multiple times, so keep an eye out for that review. Thank you everyone for watching. Go see the menu if you haven't already. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe since it helps my channel and it costs you nothing. A new review of a new Netflix rom-com will be dropping tonight or tomorrow, depending on your time zone and depending on how quickly I can edit this. So, see you then. Bye.